I wake up every minute with the fever dreams. I push a mind to a limit where it needs to feed. I work blind, got vision I don't need to see. I'm picking mind over matter, I believe in me. I need to find more hours in the day to breathe. Need to find more power in the way I be. And when my mind turns sour with the painful scenes, I need to scream out loud, I can't stop me. I wanna be the greatest like Rocky. You know I leave them all hating like a hobby. I'm out here making moves like a lobby. And if you ain't with me, it's your loss, see. I got my mind on the facts, I'm a python, grab what I like real fast. Choke until I have everything I attack, everything that I lack, everything that I want, and I see, matter of fact.
Cause I'm my own worst enemy. Only if I let it be. I can control anything if I can just think carefully. I control my destiny. Deep up in my mind I manifest it. Every morning I wake up obsessed, and everything I do the best. And deep within my mind you know I'll always manifest it.
Hello and welcome to my Mind Over Your Matter. My name is Rick, and as you can see, we have breaking news. One breaking news that I actually came on a Saturday saying that I was going to take the weekend off. That was a joke. Guess I'm not taking Saturday off, but hi everyone, and welcome to the show. As you may have seen already in the news, U.S. has attacked Venezuela overnight, and the U.S. Special Forces has captured Maduro and his wife and have already evacuated Venezuela. I'm sure that Maduro is on his way towards the U.S. and he's probably already here in the U.S. And right now, Venezuela, we don't know what's going to be happening because their president has been captured by the United States Special Forces. So we're going to go to the White House because they are going to have a press conference there. And that's what I am waiting for the press conference to start. And they do have a countdown here for 2 minutes. We're about 2 minutes away from live footage. This is not from the White House. Actually, it's going to be from Mar-a-Lago because Trump is going to address the capture of Venezuela Nicolas Maduro's today, early in the morning in the wee hours. Maduro's was captured by special forces, and it was wild for sure. Let me see if I can bring up a video I really want to capture um, the live footage of Trump addressing the nation. Um, but I do got some video to show you guys. But I think I want to wait a little bit for. You see, the sound is not even working on this. I hate StreamYard. I got to call them and let them know. They try to give me a free month. I don't want a free month. I want them to fucking fix the damn system with the sound. I can never get this thing right. And it's on their end. It's not my end. It's on their end. But let's see if I could show this video real quick.
Bring in Hugh Hewitt, former assistant White House counsel and Fox News contributor. Hugh, good morning to you. A stunning operation overnight. You were former White House counsel. And as I suspected we were likely going to see this morning, Democrats are coming out the legality
of course, the Democrats.
We already have
not fucking surprised.
McGovern saying that this was
that's the next one that need to be arrested is the Democrats.
Not authority. He said without authorization from Congress and with the vast majority of Americans opposed to military action, Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela.
Who is the Democrats for? Are they for the United States or for themselves? What the fuck?
Well, good morning. And Jim McGovern is an old friend of mine. He's an old Massachusetts liberal. My age.
Bullshit.
He's been wrong for as long as
these
I've
Democrats
been
are full of
and
shit.
In fact, this is well within President Trump's Article 2 authority. It is a replay of the 1989 Operation Just Cause that George H.W. Bush
the fuck has to go to
launched
Congress
to
for what? For
capture
Congress to stall the fuck out like they always do and never get anything done?
And he ended up spending the rest of his days in jail. Here's
these Democrats need to be put in jail.
It's very impressive. It certainly follows through, as Donald Trump does, on a threat, as he did with Iran last summer. He said, I'm going to act if you don't stop building nukes. He told Maduro, I'm going to come and get you if you don't stop tyrannizing your country. As Ms. Machado said on tape, Juan Guaido said 4 years ago, Maduro has been a ruthless tyrant dictator since he took over for Hugo Chavez, who was himself a dictator. This is great news for the 30 million people of Venezuela. I am mostly concerned for the 20,000 plus Americans who are in Venezuela right now, because it's still a police state. There's still a Cuban security service backed police operation there. And hopefully the people of Venezuela who have risen up time and time again against the dictators Maduro and Chavez rise up today in the streets like the people in Iran are doing. And bravo to President Trump. It's well within his presidential powers. So our friends on the left who have been wrong about international operations since Reagan invaded Grenada, they're good. Everyone loves freedom, and especially for the Venezuelan people.
Obviously, President Trump is not looking at getting involved in some long, protracted military operation.
When are they going to fucking wake the fuck up?
Are not interested in that. But it's
just so tired of these Democrats, man.
Going to start seeing Democrats and there are others who
fucking
are
bullshit.
How do you see the domestic? How do you think?
Why are they protecting Maduro?
Domestically,
Democrats. You know,
well,
I think the Democrats need to be.
I know Mike Lee's got his
need to be thrown in jail.
I read the tweets this morning of Deputy Secretary of State Chris Landau. We'll hear at the press conference that President Trump will hold a little bit later that he's very confident of his legal authorities. I'm sure he had the opinion of the White House counsel, the Department of Justice, the Office of Legal Counsel, saying it's well within your Article 2 authority. We have had that flotilla, this extraordinary armada in the Caribbean for weeks and months. And so if a few people try and score points off of Donald Trump for a successful extrication of a narco criminal who's a tyrant, let them try and let the American people see that the Republican Party and its friends stand for freedom and for closing America's borders to the drug trade and for making sure that people are safe and secure in Venezuela and for democracy around the world. Because as the former president or the rightfully elected president of Venezuela, Ms. Machado, said, this is about democracy. It's not about tyranny. This isn't about toppling regimes. It was very surgical. Donald Trump did it again. And boy, it drives Democrats crazy when he pulls off successes like this. But the American military is not to be trifled with. My hat is off to everyone involved in what is obviously a very complicated and long, well-planned a strategy executed by Secretary Hegseth and whoever is running Southern Command. I don't know the name of that admiral.
Hugh, Biden treated Maduro more like a nuisance than anything other than that by easing up on the sanctions, reopening the oil, and he even offered legitimacy by meeting with him. Under Biden, Maduro then tightened his grip on power, got money, leverage, and time. And that weakness emboldened Maduro and all of that he stood for. So President Trump has now come in because showing that strength deters and weakness, again, emboldens this dictatorship. But I think moving forward right now, this military operation was precise, it was effective, it was clearly a success. But I think the American people who are watching this right now, messaging is going to matter. Because if you look at the history of the U.S. overthrowing historical leaders, you have in Grenada, Panama, but also what happened in Iraq. And I think Americans are concerned that, yes, the military strikes are effective, but what happens after that? What happens next? How involved will the U.S. be? Will this be a protracted involvement in Venezuela?
I don't think so. And I think people are right to make that question, put it right on the table. Are we going to have another 20-year-long war? The answer is no. There's no big, massive invasion. There is a surgical strike. There's series, I think of 4 strikes as I read this morning to, I imagine, divert attention, surface Maduro, special operators sweep in and get him. And if they continue, if they threaten any Americans, they're out of their mind if they threaten any of the Americans in Venezuela right now. But I would not put it past the thugs who remain, who may want to try and cling to power. The people in charge of Venezuela right now, the remaining regime elements of the Maduro regime, they have a clear choice. They can step back from power, maybe do a deal with the United States to get a get out of jail free card and let the people of Venezuela be free. They have voted time and time again to be free. So this is not regime change. It's not building democracy. Venezuela's got a lot of experience with voting. It's just that their votes never counted before. And it's a wonderfully wealthy country. It ought to be the wealthiest country in South America. It's very impoverished. Its people have had to flee for a decade. They flooded Colombia, destabilized Colombia. They've come up through the United States. As the president will no doubt say at 11 o'clock, Maduro sent all of his criminals to the United States when the Joe Biden open border policy was in effect. Now, I hope Ms. Machado is right, that good, wonderful people of Venezuela who came to the United States out of fear for their lives want to go home and help rebuild the country that Maduro and Chavez before him systematically destroyed over 2 decades. That would be the best result. But it's not regime change. It's not democracy building. This is a developed nation.
Not regime change. And so we're already seeing also some statements out there, Hugh, from members of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the minority saying that they were not notified. And you saw in statements from the White House already this morning that this operation was carried out, quote, in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Do you anticipate that the president at 11 o'clock in this press conference will clarify that this follows more of a law enforcement lane than a military regime change operation?
Well, I hope he has both Secretary Hegseth and Attorney General Bondi with him, Griff. I think it is presented, and it's very clear why it exists. They pose a real threat to Americans via the narco-terrorism, and Pete Hegseth can stand up there and explain whatever we want to reveal. But I don't expect the president to say this is the end. He does not telegraph what he's going to do. He's told me, he's told you many, many times that, look, I'm not in the business of telling our enemies what I'm going to do. But for the moment, I think operations have ended. Maduro's on his way to some jail, probably in Miami, which is close. And then the president will turn it over to Bondi or Hegseth to explain. And Secretary Rubio, no doubt, will be there as well. But it's going to be a pretty triumphant press conference.
It makes zero
because
sense,
the president
man.
deserves applause this morning.
Article 2, he can't do
thank
this.
you so much
Trump
for your
has every
insights.
authority to go after Maduro and capture him.
Always good to be here.
I don't know
I'm
what
Steve
side
Doocy.
the Democrats are thinking.
And I'm Ainsley
What the hell
Earhart.
they're thinking? Why do we have a Democratic Party if they're only going to go against us in everything that we do? Anything that the United States does right? No, they want to do the wrong way. Like, what is going on with the fucking Democrats? Like, how are their brains wired that way? Like, someone needs to do a fucking study on the Democratic brains and see why they think the way they think, and justify it, because I don't understand. It's fucking crazy, man. All right, let's keep it moving over here. Let's see what else we got. We got some live feed from
his daily schedule, where he's in, where he eats dinner, and all.
And you are taking a live look here in Mar-a-Lago once again. We did get a 5-minute warning, so probably
5-minute warning.
About 4 minutes now before these remarks do begin. So looks like they're running just a little bit behind, but by 11:11, 11:12, somewhere around there, we should have President Trump. And as I mentioned, we are going to bring this to you in full. That is what we do here on Live Now from Fox. And you can watch it commercial free. We also know that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will be a part of this news conference as well. What I want to do is pull up this image right here. Now, we do have this statement that came in from the defense minister. This was over in Venezuela, where Mark and I were kind of just discussing this, but he said the Venezuelan people have been victims of the most criminal military aggression by the United States. The barbarity of the invading forces has desecrated our sacred soil, even striking civilian urban areas with missiles and rockets fired from combat helicopters. We are currently gathering information on the injured and dead, so seemingly confirming that some people were injured and dead as a result of the U.S. strikes there on Venezuela. They did say, we fully support the decree declaring a state of external emergency across the entire national territory. And as a result, the men and women of the armed forces are carrying out the instructions of President Nicolas Maduro, deploying all of our capabilities. We will win. Long live the homeland. And of course, likely that we will see President Trump specifically address that as he does take to the podium here in a second. Now, we also heard from Vice President J.D. Vance, who said the president offered multiple off-ramps, but was very clear throughout this process that drug trafficking must stop and the stolen oil must be returned to the United States. Maduro is the newest person to find out that President Trump means what he says. Kudos to our brave special operators who pulled off a truly impressive operation. He went on to say, and PSA for everyone saying this was illegal, Maduro has multiple indictments in the United States for narco-terrorism. You don't get to avoid justice for drug trafficking in the United States because you live in a palace in Caracas. Again, we're monitoring the feeds right here, and we are awaiting those comments from President Donald Trump that should be getting underway here in a matter of moments, and we're going to bring them to you in full. That's what we do here on Live Now from Fox. And as we are just past the top of the hour here, it is right now 11:10 on the East Coast and 8:10 on the West Coast. It is Saturday, January 3rd. My name is Josh Breslow, and we are going to continue to bring you coverage throughout the day as we get much more information on the detainment, so to speak, of Nicolas Maduro, the leader there in Venezuela, as well as his wife, both of whom were detained there by U.S. officials overnight, really just hours ago, as there were large-scale strikes that were conducted by the U.S. And what you're probably seeing is I keep looking down, and I did want to point out that the reason for that is we are keeping an eye on the different feeds coming in, and I'm trying to make sure that the second that we see President Trump walk in, we are able to bring that to you in full. Again, this is a live look at the stage as we learn the latest on all of this. So if you are just joining us, we did learn some information from President Trump as he spoke with Fox News a bit earlier on this morning. President Trump revealing that the U.S. did launch those strikes in Venezuela and captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife. This all happening amid Trump's war on the drug cartels, which has seen strikes on suspected drug-carrying vessels off the coast of Venezuela. Now, President Trump saying that Maduro and his wife, who have both been indicted in the U.S., are en route to New York to face prosecution. The indictment itself, about 25 pages in length, we were looking through it, and essentially it accuses Maduro of leading a, quote, corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking. It alleges that the drug trafficking efforts, quote, enriched and entrenched Venezuela's political and military elite. U.S. authorities allege that Maduro partnered with, quote, some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco terrorists in the world to bring tons of cocaine into the U.S. Again, according to the documents that we were able to get our hands on here. Authorities estimate that as much as 250 tons of cocaine were trafficked through Venezuela by 2020. The drugs were moved on go-fast vessels, fishing boats, and container ships or via planes from clandestine airstrips. Again, we are following all of the details. We did hear from President Trump a bit earlier, who said that Maduro and his wife are en route via U.S. ship over to the U.S., specifically to New York, where they have been indicted. We are also waiting to see if we do get live images of their arrival. There have been some images that are circulating online showing the detainment of Maduro and his wife. We have not been able to independently confirm that those are accurate photos and not artificial intelligence generated. Once we do confirm, though, we will make sure to show you those images here as soon as we get them on Live Now from Fox. We also have a different angle here that shows just how many reporters are out here getting ready to go. This should begin momentarily, as we did get that 5-minute warning just about 6 minutes ago, meaning we can see where President Trump is going to enter into the room, that door that's open right there at Mar-a-Lago. And if you are just joining us, do want to let you know that he has been at Mar-a-Lago for the Christmas and New Year's holiday with his family there celebrating. So he is holding this news conference from Mar-a-Lago, which is where he watched this operation, he says, unfold here. So he's expected to talk about that. We know that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will also be there to make comments. There are a lot of media members, so you have to imagine that President Trump will likely take some questions from reporters. That is normally what happens in a situation like this. The president is normally very vocal and takes a lot of questions. So we expect that will be the case, as there are so many questions that are left unanswered at this point. We are still awaiting the arrival of President Trump. He's, of course, there at Mar-a-Lago, but should be walking through the door any second now. And just wanted to lift up the audio really briefly to see if we could potentially hear any of the chatter there in the background. And at this point, not really hearing much of anything other than folks just kind of texting on their phones, trying to get all the information out there that they know so far. President Trump speaking with Fox News a bit earlier, as I mentioned, providing just a little bit more information. But we expect that we will get a lot more coming up, as we also hear from Secretary Hegseth in just a matter of moments. This was slated to start around 11 a.m. Eastern time, but it's running just a few minutes behind. Right now, it's 11:15 Eastern, and we also know that we got that 5-minute warning maybe about 7-8 minutes ago, which means this should begin momentarily. And the reason I'm showing you this angle right now, we're going to go back to the head-on angle in a second, but the reason we are showing this is because you'll actually see as President Trump does enter. And I'm combing through that indictment, as I mentioned a bit earlier, just looking for any other tidbits of information. As I mentioned here, it is about 25 pages in length. You can see it right here on your screen as we take a live look. We're kind of looking through the different pages to see what other information is listed about the charges against Nicolas Maduro, but also against his wife. Both of them currently, according to officials, are en route to New York via U.S. ship. We are waiting to see, as we should potentially get some live images of them. Now, it is also important to note that cameras are not allowed inside a federal court, so we likely won't be able to get live images as they do face a judge, so to speak, potentially later on today. All of that kind of still in flux as we wait to get more details on that. But if we get any sort of live images, as you can imagine, you're going to see them right here on Live Now from Fox. You heard someone there say in the background they're thinking about 2 minutes. So it looks as though that's maybe an official 2-minute warning coming in. You can see they are zooming in on the door that President Trump should be walking out of. Also, you'll notice there on the left-hand side of your screen, that is Fox's Lucas Tomlinson in the background. He joins us pretty frequently to break down all the latest developments on situations just like this one. We're, of course, going to try to get him on later on today to break down everything he learns from President Trump, what we know, what's still left to figure out. But this news conference set to begin here. It was slated for 11 a.m. Eastern time. We know these things don't always start on time, so it looks like we may be getting that 2-minute warning, which would indicate that it starts sometime around 11:19, 11:20 a.m. Eastern time. Have not actually seen the White House feed itself start yet. Normally, that's another indicator that this is about to begin. However, that has not happened yet. Again, though, we heard somebody in the background say they believe this was the 2-minute warning. Looks like folks are ushering somebody in, so I do want to pay attention to see if that is the president. All right, looks like they were maybe trying to get another reporter or photographer in there. You can see they're pretty jam-packed together. Now, if you're not familiar with everything that did play out this morning, we know that President Trump did confirm that Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife were captured by the U.S. hours ago, and they're aboard a U.S. warship headed over to New York City, where they are going to face prosecution here. Just hours ago, Trump confirmed on Truth Social that the U.S. conducted this quote-unquote large-scale strike on Venezuela, capturing Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. In an interview with Fox News that we played for you here just a bit ago, Trump explained that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth would be at this news conference to talk about the operation and exactly how it played out. In that interview, we did hear from Trump. He said, quote, U.S. forces practiced by building an exact replica of the house where Maduro and his wife were captured. So they did practice the operation. And we also know that it was delayed by 4 days due to weather. So it was slated to happen just about 4 days ago. So back in 2025, in the end of December. However, instead, it was conducted here. The president also explained that he spoke to Nicolas Maduro about a week ago and told him to surrender, but that he did refuse. Attorney General Pam Bondi did reveal earlier on this morning as well that Maduro and his wife were indicted in the Southern District of New York. Maduro, she says, has been charged with several different counts, including narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the U.S. Bondi added, quote, they will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in, quote unquote, American courts. We are still awaiting the arrival of President Trump. He is there at Mar-a-Lago, but is likely making those final preparations before he does enter into the area. Now, Lucas Tomlinson has been tweeting, as I mentioned. He's been posting on X and said, quote, Trump told Fox and Friends the operation to capture Maduro was delayed. Quote, we were going to do this 4 days ago, but the weather was not perfect. Again, I'm showing you this head-on shot because we should see the president pop in just a second, and we want to make sure that we have that for you in full the second it does begin. What I want to do, if possible, is go through some of the posts here that we are seeing from different officials who are reacting here, including folks with the Trump administration, but also others as well. We're hearing from Congressman Dan Goldman, and I do want to mention we're going to read you posts that are coming from both sides of the aisle here, Republican and Democrat. Dan Goldman saying Trump's unilateral operation last night was an illegal act of war without Congress's authorization. Maduro is a brutal dictator who has oppressed the Venezuelan people, but our Constitution does not yield for bad people. If Congress is to survive as an institution, the Republican majority must join us, exercising our power to hold this administration accountable for this flagrant violation of the Constitution. As of right now, a lot of the posts we're seeing, as you can imagine, are Republicans who are praising this and Democrats who are against it, saying that it was an illegal act of war. And many of them saying, as you heard Mark Chandler say a short time ago, that essentially, they believe that they should have been notified prior to this, but Mark making the point, as well as Wiz, who we had earlier, that they didn't want to reveal anything. They didn't want any kind of potential leak, and they were able to avoid that, as this here was a surprise to so many people when they woke up. Rick Scott, a Republican there in Florida, senator, saying Maduro was never the president of Venezuela. He's a thug and narco-terrorist whose regime enacted terror on the people of Venezuela and sent drugs into our country to kill our kids and grandkids. Today, I'm grateful that thanks to President Trump's leadership and our brave military, he will be held accountable. And we're not showing these to you on the screen. I'm just reading them because I want to leave up the shot so we can see when President Trump does walk in. And as we continue to go through these here, Senator Ruben Gallego saying there is no justification for the United States to be at war with Venezuela. I lived through the consequences of an illegal war sold to the American people with lies. We swore we would never repeat those mistakes. Yet here we are again. The American people did not ask for this. Congress did not authorize this, and our service members should not be sent into harm's way for another unnecessary conflict. As I mentioned, a lot of Democrats coming out against this and Republicans praising it. We are going to have those lawmakers on throughout the day to share their thoughts, their views, as it does appear that those lawmakers should actually be getting a briefing at some point in the coming days to update them on all of this, including exactly how it did play out. This one is coming in from leader John Thune, who says for years, Nicolas Maduro, the cartel he leads, and other cartels in Latin America have trafficked drugs into the United States, which have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. President Trump's decisive action to disrupt the unacceptable status quo and apprehend Maduro through the execution of a valid Department of Justice warrant is an important first step to bring him to justice for the drug crimes for which he has been indicted in the United States. I am grateful for the brave men and women of our armed forces who carried out this necessary action. I spoke to Secretary Rubio early this morning, and I look forward to receiving further briefings from the administration on this operation as part of its comprehensive counter-narcotics strategy when the Senate returns to Washington next week. I can imagine a lot of these briefings, though, would be behind closed doors. We're not going to be able to actually get inside there. Now, potentially we will get remarks, though. Sometimes lawmakers will go into these meetings, they'll walk out, and they'll come up to our roving camera to make some comments there. Thomas Massie, also a Republican who has been very critical of President Trump, saying if this action were constitutionally sound, the Attorney General wouldn't be tweeting that they've arrested the president of a sovereign country and his wife for possessing guns in violation of a 1934 U.S. firearm law. Again, Thomas Massie has been very critical of President Trump in the past, and that is a post that is just coming in here as we do wait for President Trump to make those remarks in just a matter of moments. This is running just a little bit behind as he was slated to speak at 11 a.m. Eastern time. It is now 11:25, and we have received several different 2-minute warnings, 5-minute warnings. However, as you can see, the president has not walked in just yet. That's why I'm reading some of these posts here to give you that reaction and updating you on the latest information. And of course, there are people asking Fox right now if there has been any kind of update on the timing. We know that President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are probably talking right now, providing the latest briefing to each other, the latest information with the Trump administration, so they can be kind of up to date on all of this when they do speak to the media in just a matter of moments. And more importantly, the media speaking to the nation as a whole. And of course, as you can hear there, we're kind of listening into some of the chatter. Folks have received the 2-minute warning, the 5-minute warning. However, this has not started just yet. I'm sure everyone there who's involved wants to make sure that they do have the most up-to-date information before they do provide it to the media. And as I said, more importantly than providing it to the media is providing it to the American people who are watching this in very large numbers. And if you're choosing to watch it with us here on Live Now from Fox, thank you so much for doing that. We're going to continue to cover this all throughout the day and bring you the very latest information as we get it. These comments from President Trump are going to be in full. We're also going to have Secretary Hegseth, and we may potentially get even more news conferences as the day does progress. We'll, of course, bring those to you as they do come into our newsroom. Okay, and my producer, Ryan here, just saying that there is a photo that it looks like we have via Truth Social that does actually show Maduro in custody, and this would be the first of the photos released. She's working to pull it up for me right now so we can show it to you at home as we await President Trump making his remarks. And of course, we're doing this all kind of on the fly here. So what I want to do is kind of pop this up on your screen in full. Again, the second that we see Trump walk up, you will not miss any of that here. But this is actually a post coming in from Truth Social. Big thank you to Ryan, producer here at Live Now from Fox. And you can see that photo. Looks like Nicolas Maduro's eyes are covered here. He has a bottle of water in his hand, and it says Nicolas Maduro on board the USS Warship there that is bringing him over to New York. We know that's where he's indicted, so we definitely wanted to bring this post to you here on Live Now from Fox. A big thank you to our producer, Ryan, who was able to find that and pull it in. But again, that is the first of the images that we have seen of Maduro in custody just coming in as he and his wife are traveling right now by boat over to New York, where they face that indictment. We have not received an update just yet on the timing of when all of this should be getting underway, but we're keeping an eye on that. And of course, we did get the alert, as I mentioned, around 11 a.m. from the White House, which normally indicates that they are about to start any moment now. However, as you can see, if you're watching us here, it has not started just yet. A live look there at the podium once again with the presidential seal as we await this beginning anytime soon here. The second it does begin, I promise you will not miss any of this here on Live Now from Fox as soon as President Trump does start speaking in just a matter of moments. And it does look like President Trump did release that image that I told you about of Maduro and showed you, but also video of the strikes themselves that he posted moments ago on Truth Social. We've seen a lot of the different videos, kind of short clips that have come in, but he did also release video that shows the explosions here. I'm going to work to pull that up for you here on your screen as well as we do await the comments from President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. And unfortunately, not able to pull that up just yet. But as I mentioned, our producer Ryan is working on that. So we're going to show it to you as soon as we get it. But it just provides a little bit more context on all of this. And if you are just joining us, we are just past the half-hour mark. It is 11:31 on the East Coast and 8:31 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and we've been here all throughout the morning with the help of my colleague, Christy Matino, and our wonderful producers here, Markima and Ryan, who have been basically gathering all of the information as well so we can bring it to you first here on Live Now. As we await the comments from President Trump, which should be taking place here in just a matter of moments, you can see the podium has been set up. This was slated for 11 a.m. Eastern time, and right now we are about 32 minutes after that. We did at one point receive a 5-minute warning, and then a bit later on, we received a 2-minute warning. Not sure of the reasoning behind the delay, but we are still awaiting this. And as I pop this up on your screen, you can see the reporters who are in the room there in Mar-a-Lago, including Lucas Tomlinson with Fox News, who is kind of there in the background. He's posting all over Twitter or X, depending what you call it. So you can actually check out his posts as well. And we're bringing those to you as soon as he provides that information. Now, I also do want to go through some of the other posts that are coming in from different lawmakers as they react. We're talking both Republicans and Democrats. And of course, as I mentioned, Republicans are essentially praising this while Democrats seem to be against it. The only Republican that we have seen so far come out against it is Thomas Massie, who has been a big critic of President Trump over the last several months and really several years. Lindsey Graham, senator, of course, from South Carolina, saying, to the pathetically weak and hand-wringing liberal Democrats who seem to be okay with a perpetual drug caliphate in our backyard, the centerpiece of which is Venezuela, get a grip. If you can't celebrate the fact that our military, under President Trump's command, bravely captured and brought to justice an evil, corrupt narco-terrorist dictator with American blood on his hands, then your hatred of President Trump denies you the ability to celebrate making America safer and creating a path for liberating the highly oppressed people of Venezuela. Let it be known that when the modern Democrat Party is in charge, they could care less about protecting your money from fraudulent enterprises. And when it comes to confronting evil, focuses on absurd, quote, legal theories and is virtually AWOL for the cause of freedom. Disgusting. We're likely going to be getting all kinds of reaction coming in from different lawmakers. We're going to have that for you here on Live Now from Fox as soon as it comes in. Again, if you are just joining us, we are taking a live look over Mar-a-Lago at this hour. You can see members of the media are there. They're lined up and ready to go. We should be getting another warning coming up soon that provides maybe just a little bit more information about the latest timing for this news conference, slated for 11:30 a.m. And essentially, we're still waiting on that to begin. It's about 34 minutes behind. And we know that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will also be there, likely that they are doing kind of a final briefing, an update here for all of the folks that will be involved in this effort here. And really briefly, I know I don't really want to go away from this shot because I want to make sure that we keep it up so we see as President Trump does enter into the room. We do have this live image that is over, looks like it's in the area of Venezuela, where you can see what looks to be a heavy military presence at this hour. We're getting a lot of these live images, and we've also seen a lot of folks who have essentially been gathering in large groups. We're talking tens, hundreds, thousands of people who are all over the place as they are essentially gathering, trying to figure out what's going on. Earlier, it appeared that many of them were supporters of Maduro. However, what we've heard now is that a lot of those people who are there were just essentially trying to figure out what was going on. They heard that this situation, had unfolded, but weren't sure on the details. So that's why they gathered in the streets so they could speak to people. Some of them were holding signs, though, in support of Maduro. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat, saying Trump promised no, quote, new stupid wars, yet he's starting one with Venezuela without congressional approval. People can't afford groceries and millions are losing health care, but this is where his focus is. This is unconstitutional and not what the American people asked for, end quote. Republicans showing the praise for this and Democrats
Jasmine Crockett is a fucking idiot.
Show their opposition to it. We will have several of those lawmakers on throughout the day to be in touch with them so we can bring you all of the latest information. And of course, we're keeping an eye on different developments in the situation here, things that President Trump has and has not said just yet. As I mentioned, the president did post a photo on social media showing Maduro wearing a sweatsuit and a blindfold with the caption here. It does say Nicolas Maduro on board that warship. Going to pop it up for you right here on your screen. That is the first photo that has been released by U.S. officials showing Maduro in custody as he is on that U.S. warship headed for New York, where he has been indicted. He and his wife both indicted and expected to face some serious charges there. Not quite clear if we are going to get any sort of live images from inside the courtroom when they arrive, or even images that show their arrival. However, anything we get, we're going to bring to you live, uninterrupted, on Live Now from Fox. That is what we do. President Trump telling Fox News a bit earlier on today that he actually spoke to Maduro several times, including most recently about a week ago. Maduro denied that in an interview on New Year's Eve, saying he had only spoken to Trump in November. But President Trump did say that he spoke with Maduro about a week ago, and Maduro said he was not going to surrender. So the next step, of course, was to go in and seize Maduro and his wife, taking them into custody and bringing them back to the U.S. to face the charges. We also saw some video of smoke rising from the military base there in Venezuela's capital of Caracas earlier on this morning, and it was one of a number of sites that were hit by those American strikes overnight. Again, I keep saying it, but this all happening just hours ago there. There were bombed buses with shattered windows. There was shrapnel seen next to some charred armored vehicles there, sending up a plume of smoke. There was some fallen street lights, chunks of nearby trees littering the streets, while hefty metal fences and signs were bent at sharp angles following the blast. We also have heard from President Trump as he spoke with Fox News. He did mention here that essentially there were some injured folks out there, U.S. Military personnel, who were injured in the attack. We see President Trump. Let's lift up the audio.
Okay, thank you very much. This is big stuff. And we appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. All perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, it's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, we're just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position, but they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have. And you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious, because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. And that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of the Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now, and what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but we're going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. as alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solas, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship. They'll be heading to ultimately New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over, in particular, the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang, Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And
I mean, Trump needs to stay on topic.
Louisiana called. Great.
He's all over the place now.
And he wanted us to help him, as you know. And
he needs to stay on topic.
Nice part of Louisiana.
That has nothing to do with that. It's just talk about Venezuela. Don't talk about the United States and the crimes and all that bullshit.
I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing.
Come on, we're not talking about that, Trump. Can we move on with that?
Why governors wouldn't want us to help.
That's why.
Also help.
That's the only thing I don't like about Trump.
Chicago, the crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no.
It just drives me fucking crazy.
We had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was
I don't care about the governor. Go back to Venezuela.
We're pulling out of there when they need us. We'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it.
I don't care about
likewise,
that.
Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles.
This has nothing to do with Venezuela.
Where the head of the police department made a
why he
statement
doesn't stay on topic.
If the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles.
How many times do you have to repeat this damn
long
shit?
After the fires. That's when they had the riots. In
Nobody
Los
cares.
We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us to call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back.
Oh, God.
But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people. And now Maduro will
My
never
God, stay on fucking
again be
topic.
able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like
Whoever
12-year-old
Trump's writer
Jocelyn
is, whoever writes for
Nungary
Trump,
from Houston,
I think needs
beautiful
to be
Jocelyn
fired.
Nungary, what happened to her?
Because it makes him seem like he's repeating the same shit over and over and over and making him look
by
stupid.
Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn.
You see?
And left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened.
What has to do with Venezuela?
The Maduro regime emptied out
Come
their
on,
prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from
Man, Trump is losing it with
and
this.
insane asylums. They came from
Whatever he's doing right
prisons
now.
and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more,
God,
a little bit
this
more
is
hostile,
not
a little
good.
bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill. And the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, so we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did.
Oh,
Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries. And not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines. And the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump
needs to learn how to keep shit
we are
short and
reasserting
simple.
American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago.
Trump, you don't need to be
will
adding
and we did this in my
to
first
it.
term.
Short
We had
and
great
simple.
dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming
he
back
makes
to
little
us.
comments like that.
The
It just
future will be
slows everything
determined by
down.
the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich.
Oh, Lord,
And
here we
they've
go.
made
The
our
terror.
national
Come on,
security
Trump.
stronger than ever
Stay
before.
focused.
But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage
Oh,
or
come
whatever
on. Don't care about the other
to defend
presidents.
America. But I
Stop
will
doing
never
that.
allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity
Whoever
against the
writing for
United
him, I swear to
States.
God, they need to be fired.
This extremely successful operation
This is
should
a
serve as
horrible
warning to
speech
anyone
right now.
who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just, fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation.
They're not free
This
yet.
morning,
They'll say that they're
it's
free
a
because
prouder
they get
nation this
a lot
morning
of
because it didn't
criminals
allow
and a lot of drug
this
dealers and
horrible
drug
person in
lords
this country that
that will
was
kill anybody.
doing very bad things to us.
So they're
It
not
didn't
free yet.
allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere
Like,
is
don't
right
spike
now
the
a much
football without
safer
like
place
crossing
to
the goal
be. So I
line.
want to thank
You
everybody
gotta
for
cross
being
the
here.
goal line, then spike the football. Don't
I want
spike
to
the
thank
football before
General
crossing the
Raisin Kane.
line.
He's fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect.
Come
I
on,
worked with some that just
Trump.
weren't good.
Waited all
But
this
this guy
time and
is
you just
fantastic. I watched last
filibustering.
night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice.
Horrible.
And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who
I
I'm
think the
going to ask to
best
say a few
president who
words.
gave like the
Thank you very
best
much.
like speeches and the best talking was Ronald Reagan.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation, a massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America. And again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president
You don't know that
has ever shown
Don't
this
say
kind
that.
of leadership,
You don't know
courage,
that.
and resolve. The most powerful
I
combination.
don't like the U.S. like so
world
much when they
has
start talking like
ever
this because it's
As the president
self-gloating,
said,
and I
our
don't like when they
adversaries
self-gloat.
remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman, Raising Cane, to give a few more details.
Do with America being back? It's what the fuck with Venezuela? What's going to happen next? Who's taking over?
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore,
when he took a
were his
shit.
pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of
times a day he
aligned
took a
events.
shit.
Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel. So as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization
does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed.
Wow, it
And those
happened
words
when
were
I
transmitted to the entire
finished the
joint
show last
force.
night.
Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's
Age
simply
doesn't
no
matter.
match for American military.
Who cares
might.
about the age?
As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area.
That's
the goal of our air component was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable. And as the president said earlier today, all
they
of
did
our
get
aircraft
hit.
came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission.
So
As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interest in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this.
Don't let nobody claim it.
Multiple very generous offers, and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba? Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President. Running the country. Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President. You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed.
It was about the oil.
That's going to be paid.
It was about the oil.
The oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly. We're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of.
Drugs?
We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by
the main
this thug
was about the
are also
oil
taken care of.
Mr. President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, they always say boots on the ground. So we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. but we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there, and they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Can you explain the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
It's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
That would run Venezuela.
Well, it's largely going to be for a period of time the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be.
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship going?
I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He's just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So just what your message is about that.
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was
if you tell the Democrats are going to go and warn them and tell them,
and the Department of War supported
they sabotage the mission.
Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Plus, if I could add one thing to that, Congress has a tendency to leak.
Yeah, you see?
This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, we had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
Mr. President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering if Maduro pushed back or resisted killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. The safe place is all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. People were wondering, do we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. but he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it. Go ahead, finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards.
Not with
Did
me,
that
though.
weigh on your decision?
Well, that's when we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. We're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. Can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to the oil and the drugs?
And Russia, Russia, when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to give it to them. In other words, we'll be selling oil.
Yeah, so we're the middleman now. We're the ones selling their oil.
They couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was
That's how we're going to make a lot of money
we'll be
back.
selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that? Oh,
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
That you're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time. It was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace, and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. If you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country, and they destroyed it. Remember, I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms. I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids. And that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela? And will you be sending in U.S. military
They're
troops
going to
to
be a
provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough. The people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back. Yeah.
What's being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're
arrested
very
last
protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba is an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems the Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba that tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned, it's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
Mr. President.
The answer is yes. Yes.
Aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President,
Do you have any hesitations about Machado?
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything. We will. Well, we want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening. And you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy. Very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
Mr. President,
U.S. military.
Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well,
US
I don't want to
at
get
war
into
with
the
Venezuela?
conversations, but I did have conversations with him. And I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did. Yeah.
You said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was convicted on many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are different? And would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina. And we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly. And there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
No, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless
President.
it's a bad question, in
It's
which
about
case I'll
Putin.
go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, that's always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone.
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
There was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions. We send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But if I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, it would have never happened. Putin says it. Everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never
But you're
happened.
president now.
I inherited
So
that
can we
war.
stop it?
That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this: I watched an operating last that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general, and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long. To use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath, and we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
Concerned a rogue Venezuelan general can take over the country.
Can you talk about your conversation with the vice president?
All right, there you have it. President Trump, along with other members of his administration. We did hear from Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, as well as Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, all providing information there about how everything did play out. If you are just joining us here, my name is Josh Breslow. It is 12:37 on the East Coast and 9:37 on the West Coast. I do want to get to the latest on all of this here as we take a look at this photo that was released by President Trump, and that does show Nicolas Maduro in custody. Now, President Trump says the U.S. is, quote, going to run Venezuela until the transition of power after the capture of the country's leader, Maduro, and his wife. The couple Trump did reveal were aboard a U.S. warship being transported to New York, where they've been indicted. Now, as I mentioned, Trump released this photo showing Maduro with his eyes covered on board the warship headed toward New York.
He has his
During
Chinese
remarks at
respect.
Mar-a-Lago, which
They
you
put
just
the
watched,
cuffs
the
in
president
front,
explained
not
that
behind.
no Americans were killed in the attack, and on those in Venezuela, he explained, quote,
He looks very
"The people
comfy.
are free," and, quote, "it's a prouder nation." Secretary of War Pete Hegseth adding, quote, "Welcome to 2026 and America is back." Earlier today, President Trump did confirm on Truth Social that the U.S. conducted that large-scale strike on Venezuela days due to weather, and that he spoke
Because it was like a system out there, like a low pressure system.
surrender, that he thought Maduro might surrender at the end, however, did not happen. And he also revealed that U.S. forces, quote, practiced by building an exact replica of the house where Maduro and his wife were captured.
So we got inside help.
I want to bring in a friend of the show here, Michael Zanto, foreign policy expert, to help discuss all of it. Michael, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
You're very welcome.
All right, so first off, the big president, other members of his administration there.
Well, General Kane basically did a good job of really illustrating what an incredibly excellent job the whole U.S. military did in carrying out this operation. And this operation was a major blow against dictatorship, for freedom of democracy. I think that Secretary Marco Rubio also explained things very well. I think this is a big victory for the Trump administration by having the guts, frankly, to carry it out for sure. It's a victory for the United States of America. Unfortunately, I think that President Trump's message could have been much better. His focus on oil is excessive. And keep in mind that America's enemies always falsely claim that we're in it for the oil. And sometimes President Trump kind of says that. Now, oil is important. You can't ignore it. But I do think that the president's message could have been more refined.
It's about the oil.
And really, the overall storyline for decades is democracy versus dictatorship. And Maduro, of course, was aligned, unfortunately, with our adversaries, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. So this was very important for national security as well.
One thing that stood out to me that we heard from President Trump was because we've heard from folks on the left. They have said essentially that they were not notified in a question and said Congress leaks. And of course, they wanted to prevent any sort of leaks. That was his explanation. That what do you make of that? Because obviously a leak itself could have caused some big issues. There wouldn't have necessarily been the surprise if there had been any kind of leak.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There are mechanisms to prevent representatives have. We could look at, the Democrats and Republicans involved. It's been done before with Operation to Kill bin Laden, for example. The Congress was very much involved. I think it was months before with the actual training where they created a replica of the bin Laden home. Once the CIA kind of narrowed on that house and began to suspect that it was probably bin Laden living there. There are ways, and it is unfortunately disconcerting that the Trump administration earlier in this term has sometimes not been so concerned with legality, checks and balances, and normal restraints of military power, kind of making moves of using the military in American cities in a way we've never seen before, which is disconcerting when there really wasn't any riots or something that might actually just, they couldn't have consulted Congress. I think that's reasonable to consider that possibility.
What do we need to be watching for based in your and you're watching for?
The Trump administration ideally needs to prioritize a little bit the restoration of democracy. This was one of the high notes of our invasion of Panama to get the fugitive Noriega that sets kind of a precedent. If we try to make a deal with another dictator, which perhaps the current vice president appointed by Maduro sort of is, we could be moving in a negative direction. Still, by exerting control, we could revive the oil industry, which weakens our adversaries, Russia, Iran, and helps the American public as well, cheaper prices. But, and it has been the U.S. position since the end of the and served us incredibly well that we support democracy and freedom. And when we support democracy and freedom historically, we're at our best and we tend to be our strongest. Today, our military showed how we still have by far the best military in the world, but I think we'll do well in the long run by doing good, which is doing our best to restore democracy and freedom to Venezuela rather than trying to cut a deal with a dictator for short-term reasons.
Taking a look at this photo here before I let you go, did want to ask what stands out to you about this photo of Maduro that was released by President Trump there on Truth Social?
Well, I think I see handcuffs if I'm correct, because I'm looking at it from my laptop right now.
It looks like it, yeah.
I think that generally what we're seeing with this operation, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized it, and so the general is that this is a Justice Department-led operation. They had an indictment from a U.S. court. He's going to be tried in a U.S. court, Southern District of New York, as they pointed out. So that there is a legal basis. He's a criminal. He was a fugitive. Thug is a good word, even though not a technical word. Very, very good word. So it shows the power of American justice. In fact, it was a Secretary of State from a different party, Madeleine Albright, that decades ago, after the terrorist attack against our naval ship USS Cole before 9/11, said that something to the effect that the arms of American justice is very long, and this is about justice. And when we can tell the person their defense and bring them before a court, American court, or another court that has jurisdiction, that is the greatest thing we can do to serve justice throughout the world.
All right. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and discuss all of this, to break it down. Anything that we missed, anything you want to make sure to mention here before I let you go?
I will highlight what Marco Rubio also highlighted. This is a blow against the Cuban government. So, and as others today have pointed out, as well as myself, this is a blow against Russia, China, and Iran. And let us hope, I personally hope the administration uses a similar approach as President Trump has suggested he would, and put us on the side of the Iranian people against the murderous, brutal dictators in Tehran. We could see freedom in Venezuela. We could see freedom in Iran. And we could even see freedom finally in Cuba. This could be a major blow against dictatorship. I just think we need to remember the overall plot of decades. It's about democracy against dictatorship. And we cannot forget who we are as Americans. As Americans in the United States, we are about freedom and democracy. And if we ever forget that, we lose track of who we are, and we're far weaker as a result.
All right. Michael Zanto, foreign policy expert. Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me break off of this and bring it back to me. What a great way to start 2026, right? Capture Maduro's and give Venezuela back to the people, but it's not going to be as smoothly as Trump has mentioned. It's a process. You gotta understand their military were very up in arms with Maduro, so that's going to be a problem. How are they going to resolve that? Because the military cannot be trusted. You know, they could try to be like, yeah, we're for the U.S., and then they could sabotage and create chaos. And I don't think that's what Trump will want. Listen, we're living in really, really unique times. Things are happening really fast. I don't know what else to say, but let's watch some more news here about what happened and what happened overnight. And then I got a couple of Tyson de la Cruz to look at, and one other report about earthquakes, and then I'm wrapping it up for today. Of course, the sound is not working like usual. StreamYard, you guys are horrible. But let's go ahead and watch this, and we're gonna watch a couple of videos, and then I'll be out, and we all can enjoy our weekend without interruption. And I did say I was gonna come back in if there's something big that happens, and something big happened, and I'm here. So let's get this started. See if I can get this to share.
It is 8 a.m. on the East Coast, and if you are just waking up this morning, we are following breaking news. President Trump announcing the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro overnight in a large-scale U.S. military operation.
Attorney General Pam Bondi confirming Maduro and his wife have been indicted in New York on drug and weapons charges. The couple, quote, will soon face the full wrath of American justice.
It comes after explosions rocked the capital of Caracas and surrounding states. Early this morning, President Trump is expected to hold a news conference from Mar-a-Lago at 11 a.m.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, where the commander-in-chief has been spending the holidays. Hey, Lucas, what more can you tell us this morning?
Good morning, Doc. For weeks, President Trump had pledged there would be strikes ashore in Venezuela, and that's exactly what happened in the pre-dawn hours, where the National Mission Force Special Operations Forces were launched, likely from the USS Iwo Jima offshore, after the Air Department, the jets and helicopters on board had been moved to Puerto Rico. Those forces, the strike force, assaulted Maduro's compound in the pre-dawn hours after those airstrikes from U.S. military aircraft took place in Caracas around 2 in the morning, Caracas time, 1 in the morning, East Coast time. And President Trump posting to Truth Social after Maduro and his wife had left the country. I'll read it. The president posted, quote, "The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter." And we heard from Venezuela's leader just a day ago, guys, in a car, a dash cam video saying he was open to a deal with President Trump. He said he would be open to combating the drug trafficking. Recall for many days now, there have been increased sanctions on Maduro's regime. His regime had been called a cartel, had been sanctioned as a foreign terrorist organization. We'd seen dozens of strikes against drug boats in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. And then this morning at 2 in the morning, we saw this dramatic airstrikes, likely from F-22 fighter jets, stealth fighter jets. Also recall those F-35s that have been moved to Puerto Rico, likely taking part in the strikes. We saw B-1 bombers, a flight in the Caribbean just last evening. It's not clear if those also took place. We also, as you can see in the video coming up, dozens of U.S. Army helicopters, likely from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Those are the Night Stalkers. Those are the world's most elite pilots that would have taken the strike force into Caracas to detain Nicolas Maduro. This appears from the American side to be bloodless. It appears all aircraft were able to successfully execute their mission, and all American military personnel, those elite Tier 1 forces from the Delta Force, the Ranger Regiment, and perhaps SEAL Team 6, all made it out of the country in one piece. And let's not forget, this was a showdown between President Trump and Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. And as Elliot Abrams told me a few weeks ago, there can only be one winner, and President Trump doesn't like to lose. And that's what we saw in these strikes, guys.
So obviously for the past couple of weeks, Maduro has been looking out and seeing the most advanced flotilla in world history parked outside of his country. It's probably been a little bit nerve-wracking for him. But obviously the operation, this operation was successful and is over. But I don't think that we're necessarily going to see the USS Gerald Ford pull anchor and leave the region anytime soon.
Doesn't appear that way, Charlie, although it is worth noting that Ford has been at sea for 6 months, deploying back in June. She was moved from Europe to move to the Caribbean, part of what the Trump administration has said repeatedly, and with this new national security strategy, that the focus would be on the Western Hemisphere. We saw in the new national security strategy that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth unveiled at the Reagan National Defense Forum. And you're right, we've seen this huge buildup of U.S. military forces in the Caribbean, the USS Gerald Ford Strike Group, not just the aircraft carrier and squadrons of F-18 Super Hornets, but also the USS Iwo Jima amphibious ready group with thousands of Marines and, of course, dozens of attack helicopters. It's likely those Night Stalkers, the elite pilots that flew the strike force into Venezuela, were based aboard Iwo Jima. We also saw dozens of other warships in the region as well, armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. And this buildup clearly had an impact on Nicolas Maduro. That's why in that interview, that's why we likely saw him almost pleading to the Trump administration for mercy. And perhaps this operation had been planned for a number of days. Remember, we had the strike in Nigeria targeting ISIS forces on Christmas Day. We've been hearing something was in the works for the past few days, and we hadn't seen President Trump on camera in the last few days. The last time we heard from him was New Year's Eve, Charlie, when a reporter asked him, "What's your goal for the new year?" And the president said peace, Charlie.
Lucas, with Maduro being gone, taken into U.S. custody by the DOJ, it leaves his vice president, who we've only heard from on state TV, saying that they wanted proof of life of Maduro and his wife. Have you gotten any more information on what is going on there? Do we have any indication of what is happening? Will there be a regime change?
Fire alarm going off in the building.
Well, President Maduro is no longer running the country, and that statement from the vice president of Venezuela confirmed what President Trump said about Maduro and his wife had been removed from the country. We did hear from President Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi. If you could pull up that statement on X, I can read that for our viewers. Pam Bondi wrote, quote, Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. Now, it's notable, Doc, when you asked what comes next in Venezuela, senior official who used to be posted at the Pentagon just told me recently that there are 25 to 50 Venezuelan generals that have bank accounts in excess of billions of dollars, not millions, but billions. You have to wonder if any kind of opposition leader like Maria Corina Machado were to come to the country, would those generals support her new leadership or whoever is designated by the Trump administration if they can make that happen in the country?
Well, you know, that's such a great point to raise, Lucas, whether or not these generals would trust someone like Maria Corina Machado, because the Cartel del Soles, Cartel of the Suns, is specifically named that because the epaulets, the sun-like shaped dressing on the generals' uniforms, that's where they got it. The reason why they were given that name is because the military is the cartel. That's what ultimately Nicolas Maduro is being indicted on in terms of running a cartel organization of narco-terrorists. You mentioned, though, Maria Corina Machado. Here's a little bit of what she had to say on Fox and Friends. Watch.
I completely trust the strategy President Trump is developing and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. They know very well with whom they're dealing with. This is not a legitimate president. This is the head of a criminal structure that was already defeated in a presidential election by landslide. So they know how to deal with these kind of individuals that are criminals, narco-terrorists. And I believe that Maduro will get a very clear picture of what are his options and what's the future for Venezuela.
What would be your message to Americans who are worried that this could become another costly foreign entanglement for them?
I believe it's exactly the contrary. Maduro started this war. President Trump is ending this war. A transition to democracy in Venezuela will make the Americas, including the United States, safer, more secure, and more prosperous. Because Venezuela, our country, has been turned into that safe haven for all those enemies, forces that want to undermine the institutions of the United States and also kill people in Venezuela and in your country. So we are solving and dismantling a criminal structure that has produced great pain and turned our country, our nation, into the best ally of the United States, a security shield for the Americas, and a huge opportunity for energy security as well. And one thing very important, Rachel, millions of Venezuelan migrants will come back home the day Maduro goes.
So that's what Maria Corina Machado had to say back in November. Is it your sense, Lucas, that at this press conference in just a few hours at 11 a.m., that we may learn more about whether or not the Trump administration is putting its backing behind someone like Machado, or if there's another plan for the governance now without Maduro?
Recall, Griff, that the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, received about 80% of support inside the country. What officials have told me in the past is, unlike Iraq and Afghanistan, in Venezuela, it's a very united country, both politically and ethnically. You don't have Sunni, Shia, Druze, Kurds in Venezuela. It is one people, and they are pretty united. In fact, just a few minutes ago on social media, you've seen people start to take to the streets, yelling out of their apartments in Caracas. It sounds like many of the people in Caracas and in Venezuela are joyful today about Maduro being removed from office in this daring operation led by Special Operations Forces in the cover of night at about 2 a.m. this morning in Caracas. Certainly, this is something we're going to wait to hear from President Trump. Clearly, the Trump administration has game planned this out. This was just one part of the operation. Now it goes into the political realm, and who is going to rule the country, and will these generals allow any opposition leader to do it, or perhaps one of these generals might take over?
That's a great point. Not only are they one people, they also have a history of free markets and free self-governance. Lucas Tomlinson, we'll check back in with you as things warrant.
Thanks, Lucas.
And in the next hour, we will be hearing from Senator Tom Cotton, who was briefed by Rubio earlier this morning, and he'll be joining us in the 9 a.m. hour. Let's bring in Brett Velikovich, Fox News contributor, drone expert, and president of Power US. Great to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. So first off, just big picture, what do you make of all of these developments this morning?
Well, hey, good morning. I think Maduro just discovered that the U.S. doesn't bluff when it comes to protecting our citizens. I mean, he needed to go. He and his regime were not just drug dealers, they were narco terrorists. And this was enforcement of the law against a dictator who was killing Americans for years, and deterrence for our country at the highest levels. And deterrence doesn't come from simply talk. It comes from bold, swift action like this. And what we just witnessed is Venezuela, the collapse of a regime that survived for years on corruption, fear, terrorism. Maduro didn't just govern his country. He turned a once wealthy nation into a narco-terrorist state. He exported instability across the region, and he hid behind sovereignty while bleeding his own people dry. And I think the explosions last night are just the sounds of justice finally catching up to him and his cronies, who have starved their people while lining their pockets with drug money, illicit oil deals. Now the Venezuelan government knows the gig is up, right? His capture exposes the fragility of their house of cards, which was built on rigged elections, repression, and frankly, the Venezuelan people deserve, better than breadlines and blackouts. And so hopefully with Maduro gone, there's finally hope for some democracy. And cheers to our administration, who just sent a clear message around the world. Criminal regimes that traffic drugs, destabilize the region, threaten U.S. interests, they're no longer untouchable. And so I really believe the proper amount of power was applied here, quickly, intelligently, and it's going to restore deterrence across our own hemisphere.
Yeah, and Brett, with your obviously military background, you're well aware of what must have gone into this operation, which President Trump called brilliant in an interview early this morning with the New York Times. But it does appear that it was quite stunning, quite specific, with precision, and it doesn't appear that any U.S. service member was injured or killed, or that the Venezuelan officials even responded.
Well, I'll tell you what, Maduro is lucky he was captured alive. It's very interesting. We haven't heard about more resistance during this operation, which just tells me, how easily this regime collapsed. Cheers to the president. Cheers to this administration. Marco Rubio, who no doubt was probably the architect behind a lot of this, because this appeared very deliberate and calculated of an operation. You had precision strikes, intelligence-driven operations that led up to this, which systematically stripped the regime of its ability to respond, its ability to communicate, control events on the ground. I don't think this was just shock and awe. This was meticulously planned. It was surgical pressure. By the time this decisive action arrived and occurred and they captured Maduro, his inner circle was already isolated. The command and control was probably fractured. This illusion of power, it just evaporated. And that's what modern enforcement looks like. It's not occupation. It's not nation building. We're collapsing a criminal regime, a criminal leadership, so that they have no options left. And clearly this involvement, this reported involvement of U.S. Special Operations Tier 1 forces, it underscores that this wasn't this brute force. It was a meticulous operation. You had quiet professionals operating with discipline, restraint, executing this mission flawlessly. And that's the difference between projecting strength as a nation and not recklessness. So the amount of precision, the amount of intelligence that goes into something like this, I can tell you, is just incredible. And it demonstrates that rogue regimes can be reached quickly and removed very surgically.
And I'm sure we're going to hear more about what went into the planning of this at 11 o'clock a.m. for the press conference by the president. Brett Velikovich, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Brett.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
All right, guys. There's a fire possibly in my building. So I'm gonna cut the show now and evacuate the building because there's possibly a fire here. I got in touch with the fire department here and they were running upstairs, so I got to get the fuck out. So with that said, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I gotta run. I gotta get my cats together and get the fuck out of here. All right, guys. Have a good one and good weekend. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good night, and I'll catch you on the flip side. I'll be back possibly maybe later to see what the fuck is going on here with my situation. All right, guys. Have a good one. Peace.